Welcome, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Maybe we'll have some additional folks trickling in, but wanted to get started. And thank you all very much for being here. We have to start our meetings with an official roll call to make sure that we have a quorum of commissioners present. So bear with us while we do that. Hearings Manager Thomas.
Thank you. Commissioner Ackerman, Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins, Commissioner Ogletree. Commissioner Oath, you have 3 commissioners present.
Thank you, and that is a quorum for our business, so we will really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here tonight for this public comment hearing regarding extraction, Draco, oil and gas development plan, Rule 511 local public hearing. This is docket number 2401-00004.
Who are you?
Would you like us to go through and introduce ourselves?
No, just who do you represent? Are you council?
Absolutely. So thanks for being here. We are the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission. And we will be holding this 511 hearing here tonight. Really happy to be here in Erie. Actually, as I was driving in, I was reminiscing. I adopted my dogs from a rescue here in Erie and brought them back here a bunch of times for some socialization and some training. So have a lot of happy puppy memories here. Also, it's great to be here at the Erie Middle School. Want to thank the local school district who have made this space available to us. I suspect many of you know this building well. Also want to thank the Erie Police Department. We do have officers here off duty supporting the event tonight. We also do have Spanish translation services available. We were checking in with folks as they checked in to see if that was a need that anyone would like to take advantage of. If you do, please you could either raise your hand now or check in with our staff at the check-in space for some translation services. Want to stress that tonight is really about hearing from you. So my fellow commissioners and I are really going to speak very little. I'm just going to make a couple opening remarks. So as I already said, tonight's hearing is formally called the 511 hearing. That's the section of our regulations that this is under. And the purpose really is for us to hear from community members regarding a proposed oil and gas development plan, and we love our acronyms, so we generally call them OGDPs. At these hearings, we're not really here and able to engage in question and answer kind of session. It's really very, very much listening to you all. And got to get through kind of some of the logistics. So we have about 33 folks signed up to speak tonight, and if others have requested some time as you came in, that's also an option. So with the time that we have, we're gonna ask folks to limit their comments to 3 minutes each. And please just honor that time, so everyone who is here tonight and took time out of their day to be here has an opportunity to speak. We do have a timer, and so it may make a beeping to kind of help guide you to know when you hear that. Please just try to wrap up your comments. If we have to, we may have to kind of interrupt and move things along, but we want to hear from all of you, so let's work on that together. And let's see. If you haven't yet signed up to speak, but decide either now or as others are speaking that you'd like to do so, please get your name added to the list and get a queuing number. And also, like if you are signed up to speak and somebody really kind of hits the note of what you were wanting to say, you're welcome to again continue with your comments, but you can also kind of share with us that someone else really kind of shared the spirit of what your comments were, and we will certainly make a note of that and what your comments were. I would note some of us will be taking notes while you speak, so if you see us typing on computers or writing notes into our phone documents, please know we're just listening intently and taking notes on your comments. We also got a number of comments, written comments submitted in advance, which is great. We have those and either have read or are in the process of reading those, and they are entered formally into our hearings docket. So we appreciate those. And want to stress that your comments, whether they were in writing or here tonight in person, matter a lot to us. We evaluate all of the data and information that we have received and will receive on this OGDP. Let's see. We do want to note that our meeting is being recorded tonight, and the recording itself will also be added to the docket materials. I would note that we have a couple of commissioners who were not able to make it tonight. They were at a national conference that had been scheduled previous to this hearing, but that recording will give them an opportunity also to review all of your comments that you make tonight before the hearing next week. That hearing at which we will deliberate on this OGDP is next Wednesday, November 6th, and that will occur virtually. There are a number of details about that hearing posted on our website. And with that, I am going to ask Interim Director Aaron Ray to just kind of briefly describe the Energy and Carbon Management Commission's mission and describe our permitting process. So thanks again for taking the time to join us this evening and express your comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Oath. Can folks hear me? Good. My name is Aaron Ray. I'm the Interim Director of the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. ECMC's mission is to regulate the development of oil and gas, deep geothermal resources, and carbon sequestration, and the underground storage of natural gas in a manner that protects public health, welfare, safety, the environment, and wildlife resources. I want to very briefly describe the proposed extraction Draco oil and gas development plan and ECMC's OGDP review process so you understand what has happened so far in this process. On January 17th of 2024, Extraction Oil and Gas submitted an application for the Draco oil and gas development plan to ECMC. Prior to submitting that application, a pre-application meeting was held in August 2023 where representatives from Extraction, Weld County, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Town of Erie, the Bureau of Land Management, and ECMC staff, as well as Boulder County, discussed the proposed application. The proposed oil and gas development plan is located in unincorporated Weld County. Extraction proposes to drill 26 horizontal wells using electric drill rigs and Tier 4 or better engines for hydraulic fracturing. Extraction is proposing approximately 20 acres of total surface disturbance and a tankless, fully electrified production facility. ECMC staff completed 2 reviews of the application, and the director determined the application was complete on June 18th. Extraction, the Department of Public Health and Environment, the Town of Erie, and ECMC staff held a consultation on June 28th to discuss best management practices, and Extraction committed to those best management practices on July 1st. More information about those BMPs can be found in the director's recommendation document, which is part of the file on ECMC's website. The first public comment period was open for 30 days from June 18th to July 18th, and we received a total of 418 comments. The director's recommendation was filed on August 16th, and as Commissioner Oath mentioned, the Commission will review the application on November 6th, at which time the Commission could approve the application, could attach additional conditions of approval, could deny the application, or could delay the decision to a future date. You're welcome to attend that Commission hearing and provide public comment at that time as well. Thank you for making time to share your views with us, and with that, I will turn it back to Commissioner Oath to begin the hearing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that, it is our turn to listen. We are going to start with some comments from the Town of Erie first, and then after them will be comments from the 511 requester, Flatiron Meadows Oil and Gas Monitoring Group, and then we will go to individual comments. So Town of Erie, please come on up.
Thank you.
Just all the way up.
Hello? I'm going to stand over here to the side so I can see my own slides, or I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm David Frank, the Director of Environmental Services for the Town of Erie, and we're obviously here to talk about the Draco Oil and Gas Development Plan. There we go. a little bit of formatting there to the location. So Draco is located here on the eastern edge of town, just outside of the town of Erie in unincorporated Weld County. So despite the fact that it is surrounded on all sides by the town of Erie, we do not have surface siting authority. This facility is regulated by the ECMC and Weld County. Weld County gave their permit back in late February. We do have some standing as the proximate local government because obviously we are impacted by these activities. And so today I'm going to spend some time just talking about some of the issues that remain unresolved at this late hour. We've been meeting with Extraction for nearly a year. I think the term Draco first crossed my desk last November. So we've been meeting with them continually for a year. We've negotiated a plethora of best management practices, engineering controls, try to make sure that this is the safest possible facility. But there are still a few concerns that I would like to express to the commission and to the public here today. So this is a zoomed in. This is the Draco pad here. This entire area is currently undeveloped, but is currently being developed. This is a westerly neighborhood. We got our initial pre-application for this neighborhood was back in 2017. So for 7 years, we've been working on building this residential neighborhood. Of course, then in 1 year, we've got an oil and gas proposal. So it takes 7 years to make a neighborhood, 1 year for oil and gas. There are currently 5 residential building units. There are 5 homes within 2,000 feet of Draco. They sit right along here in unincorporated Weld County. But I would like this commission, as it reviews the Draco OGDP, to keep in mind that in 3 years, when this facility is presumably wrapping up pre-production, there will be 72 additional homes within 2,000 feet. And again, this has been in the works for 7 years. I've been meeting with Southern Land Company, the developer out here. They have offered voluntarily to phase this project such that these 72 homes will not be occupied. There will be nobody living here for 3 years from now. So what I would ask of the commission is, if Draco is to be approved, that there is a strict 3-year time limit on their preoccupation activities. That all drilling, fracking, flowback, everything be done within 3 years, because at that point, I can no longer prevent these homes from being sold and people living there. So that's a pretty simple ask. It shouldn't take 3 years to drill these wells if they go ahead and get on it. Secondarily, this is the haul route as presented in the application. I know this figure is like impossible to read, so this is the haul route from Draco up County Road 7 to Erie Parkway and out to I-25. That's good and fine, except for the solid waste, non-hazardous waste, because of course the landfill is right here in the other direction. Here's the entrance to the landfill. You're obviously not going to get there by going northeast I-25. You're going to get there by going down County Road 7 across 6 and down to 5. The issue here is that this half-mile section of County Road 6 is unpaved and pretty much unmaintained. So we've got a pretty simple ask that in order to take the most expedient and reasonable, least impactful route to the landfill, that this half-mile section of road be improved in order to accommodate that heavy truck traffic. This is from the application. This is their waste generation estimates. There's a lot of numbers here. I'll sum it up. You're talking about 4,300 round trips to a landfill during pre-production. So they could come up to Erie Parkway, past the high school, where our most inexperienced drivers are most often found, and then down to the landfill. This would add about 1.5 miles to the one-way journey to the landfill, so about 3 miles per trip. That's going to be about 12,000 added miles by not improving this road. That's the equivalent of driving to San Francisco and back 5 times in heavy trucks full of drill cuttings. It's unnecessary. It will cause a significant amount of NOx added to our already increasing ozone problems. It will create issues with potential, say, literal impacts with other vehicular travelers. And of course, the other solution is to use the designated haul route to go to some other landfill facility. One of the potential landfills listed in their permit application is 96 miles away. That's 96 times 4,300, round trip miles is a lot. We think it's pretty reasonable to ask as a condition of approval that they use the very close front range landfill and that they get there by the most expedient route. Moving away from the actual pad location out into what's called the drilling and spacing unit, where their underground laterals will be extending out into Boulder County under the town. The town recognizes that this is 8,000 feet deep. There's a mile of intervening shale, and that this is, at this point in history, pretty routine stuff, even if they are drilling 5 miles instead of 3. There are 22 wells out here that are going to be plugged and abandoned, and those 18 facilities reclaimed. That's fantastic news. I'm sure everybody in this room is very excited to see these old derelict facilities and rusted tanks vanish from their neighborhoods. But there are also 49 existing plugged and abandoned wells out here. Now, I understand drilling next to old vertical holes that are previously plugged is also pretty routine in the state of Colorado. This is nothing new. But I went and reviewed these 49 wells, and 5 stuck out to me. Sorry, my colors aren't great here. These 5 here, which I sent over to extraction and said, would your engineers also look at these 5 wells? And they agreed. These wells are of grave concern, and I'll jump through them here real quick. So again, here's a simplified map of the production area. First well's over here. It's the Prince number 1 well. It sits right here. This is 109th, 287's over here. This is just outside of the town of Erie. This is unincorporated Boulder County, but we are still very concerned about this well, even if it's not within our municipality. The reason being, there are no records of when this well was drilled or who drilled it. There's no record of it ever being plugged. It was found to be leaking hydrocarbons in 1995, and then COGC staff visited this well to replug it. I encourage everyone in this room to go read this plugging report. It's called the Summary of Activity Letter, dated October 11th, 1995. These are some of the highlights. They found one 30-foot joint of unccemented casing set at the surface, which was badly bent 15 feet below ground level, so this well had already been hit by something at some point. They did not set new casing, they did not cement new casing. This is how this well exists. They took a piece of machinery, tipped it back up straight, and said, good enough. At 150 feet depth, they were circulating peat gravel and wood, quote, apparently drilling on a wooden plug. I'm going to assume that when this well was originally plugged, a log of wood plugged it with dirt on top of that. They managed to achieve a depth of 800 feet below ground level. That's where they set their plugs in 1995. There is presumably no plugging the other 7,200 feet of this well. This represents 10% of this boring. That's how that well exists today. That well needs to be re-entered and replugged, probably expediently. There's a note that the landowner informed them that there's another hole 600 feet to the north of Prince number 1. This well does not appear in any other COGCC records. This is not in the database. This well is completely unknown to the state, though they did decide to go over there and set a 50-foot plug in that one. I'm going to guess that's the only plug in that well. Moving on, this is the Young 23 or 623 well. We're just going to move left to right across the DSU here. Young 623 sits right here, right next to the Meadowlark Elementary and Middle School. It's about 500 feet from the school building itself. This one is at least in its own dedicated track, which we can all appreciate. It was plugged in 2012, so fairly recent plugging, almost current standards. That's not the upsetting part. The records on this well are just very incomplete. There's no record of any of the plugs being tagged, so we can just assume they probably weren't. And there's no record of a surface plug being put in. There is probably a surface plug, but they didn't write it down in the form. I think this well needs a little special attention too. Next is the Young 123 well. This well sits right here, right in the middle of this neighborhood, right? It was spud in 1981, plugged and abandoned in 1995. We just read excerpts of a plugging report from that year. Obviously not super duper high quality plugging standards in the late 20th century. It's about 20 feet from 3 different residences in this neighborhood. If you are in attendance, if you live at 2104 Amber Court, or if that's your neighbor, please come talk to me after the meeting, get a card. I would love to have a conversation. Next, we've got the Erie 8E Unit 2 well. That one sits right here. These last 3 wells, the main issue here is that these neighborhoods were built in the late 90s, early 2000s. Nobody really understood the potential danger that these plugged and abandoned wells could have. They were just kind of assumed to be permanently plugged. The town had no setback standards for how close you could build houses. We've changed that a lot since, but this is the hand we're dealt, and this is what we have to deal with. This was spud in 88, plugged in 2000. It's about 25 feet from the nearest home. Again, if you live at 905 Reese Court or knows who do, please put them in contact with me. Last one's the Erie 8 Unit number 1. Another similar situation. This one's in the front yard instead of the back. Split in 85, plugged in 2000, about 25 feet from 427 Graham Way. What the town of Erie would like to see with at least these 5 wells, and perhaps more, is requirements for Civitas to install some soil vapor monitoring with landowner consent, of course. We're not asking for trespass, but assuming all of these folks are agreeable to go locate these wells positively, install soil vapor monitors, make sure that once horizontals are drilled and fracked and the bottoms of these wells disturbed, that they don't become compromised. And if they do, if we do see hydrocarbons, methane seeping into the surface, the operations at Draco be stopped until these wells can be replugged and properly put to bed if they become an issue. I've got a lot more to say, but I know everybody's time is really limited, so I'm going to limit my comments to that today. I'll be offering additional comments, both written and verbal, for the hearing next week, but that's what I have for tonight. I'll be around after the meeting. Please, anybody, if you want to come talk to me about these issues or others, I'll be here out in the parking lot until we all go home. Thank you.
Thank you, really appreciate that. Next up, Flatiron Meadows Oil and Gas Monitoring Group.
You want to, yeah, we want to face him here.
So, hi, I'm Sandy Carroll. Oh, can you hear me?
Hello?
I know.
I'm Sandy Carroll. I represent Flatiron Meadows Oil and Gas Monitoring Group. We're the petitioner for tonight's meeting. And thank you all for coming. There will be three of us speaking on behalf of Flatiron Meadows Oil and Gas. Myself, Chris Hullaberry, and Liz Fisher. This, David showed a sample of this map. This is the well sticks and how they flow in the drilling spacing unit. We thought it was a good backdrop for what we wanted to say tonight. Good evening. As I said, I'm Sammy Carroll. I am an Erie resident and the founder of the Flatiron Meadows Oil and Gas Monitoring Group. It's odd to me that we're only meeting tonight. I was happy to introduce myself to all of you. I feel like we've been working together for like 10 months as we navigated this. I actually worked on Draco more than my paying job most weeks. So I've done so out of deep concern for our community's health, our children's future, and the well-being of our environment. The uniquely complicated nature of the Draco Oil and Gas Development Project warranted tonight's meeting, and I thank you again, as I did individually, for accepting our petition for tonight. Never before have lateral well bores been attempted at this length. Never before has such a densely populated area been impacted. Never before has an extraction company shown such disregard for a town or counties, knowing the regulations are in place and finding that little loophole David Frank pointed out and how to circumvent them. Never before have there been so many existing wells in a drilling spacing unit. I will not spend my time tonight reminding you of the public health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife impacts that a project such as Draco would have. You know these all too well. Instead, I'd like to talk about the momentum of SB 19181 and how it brings us to today. It is fair to say, and I'll start by asking a question. Where do you as a commission want to be remembered in these years after the passing of this momentous legislation? It is fair to say that the attitude of extraction has not kept up with this transformative policy. They seem to want to keep things as they are, to ask the ECMC to turn a blind eye, to revert to the good old days pre-SB 19181 and pre-COVID when the world realized and showed that they could curtail their dependency on oil and gas. Frankly, the arrogance of extraction screams volumes that they would even put up a proposal such as this, trying to fast track it with Weld County and hope to conclude before the cumulative impacts rules making, lest those became retroactive. Extraction's arrogance shows in the alternative location analysis, which included a more protective location that would require rezoning, but somehow that revision to rezoning made it not viable. Their arrogance showed in asking for waivers on their non-compliance for sound impacts. Their arrogance shows in asking for waivers on their non-compliance for the wetlands. Their arrogance shows in asking for waivers on their non-compliance for community ditch use. Their arrogance shows in asking, where are your lawyers? When they know that the 511 rule is written so that any one person can request a public hearing. Their arrogance shows in asking why we didn't file for affected party status when they know that we would not have qualified under those rules. Their arrogance shows in wasting your time as a commission with a proposal that has so many errors and misinformation. And perhaps most glaring, Extraction's arrogance shows in their decision to not attend tonight. To see the faces of the community and the land that this project would have such a profound impact on. Extraction's arrogance is myopic, parochial, and behind the times. They are reactive, not proactive. They have not done right by the citizens of Colorado. In the Draco proposal, they have not done right by you. Commissioner Ackerman's concerns about the potential impact of oil and gas operations on nearby residential areas and wildlife. The proposal has not done right by Commissioner Cross's concerns that applications for oil and gas operations provide sufficient information to ensure public trust in the ECMC evaluation process. Commissioner Messner's concerns about applications that do not adequately address cumulative impacts on health and the environment and which emphasize responsible well plugging and abandonment. Commissioner Oath's concerns about protecting public health and supporting the right of community engagement. Commissioner Robbins' concerns that operators demonstrate a commitment to avoiding, minimizing, and mitigating negative impacts on communities. So I ask you again, where do you as a commission want to be remembered in these years after the passing of SB 19181? Is it having to prove this atrocious OGDP? Or is it taking a stand and putting extraction on notice? That arrogance and errors and waivers and noncompliance and fast tracking and ignoring the requests of this commission will no longer stand. And a recalibration is necessary to demonstrate respect not only to this commission, but to the citizens of Colorado. Thank you.
Good evening. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Commission for coming out tonight, giving us a chance to talk about our perspectives as a community. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris Oliveri, and my family and I moved to Erie about 2 years ago. A new job opportunity brought us out here, and when we were looking for a house, we found Erie, and we figured this was a place that we could set up shop, grow our family, and have a great life. We love Erie, and had we had the chance to do it all over again, we would still pick Erie. We love it, and we're very concerned about the future of this town. So a little bit about my background, who I am. I have a bachelor's and a master's in chemistry from Stony Brook University. PhD in chemistry from Northwestern University. I actually started my career at ExxonMobil, working in oil and gas, and I stayed there for 15 years as a senior scientist. I'm incredibly proud of my time there and my accomplishments that I helped in that industry. But unlike many who speak out against oil and gas development, I fundamentally believe oil and gas is critical to the prosperity in Colorado, but also in the United States. Despite significant investment in renewables and there's significant growth, oil and gas will remain a dominant part of the energy mix for the future. But given the significant health and safety concerns associated with oil and gas and the near and longer term environmental consequences, it must be done with the utmost care and attention to risk management. As a scientist, I believe experimentation is critical to technology advancement, but advancement at the scale that oil and gas operates must be done carefully as it brings significant risk. As the regulatory landscape continues to evolve across the state, hydrocarbons are becoming much more difficult to access. As a result, operators like Extraction are forced to push the boundaries of what is possible and technically achievable at scale. And their primary goal is straightforward: maximize shareholder returns. However, the pursuit of this goal often comes at the expense of community and environmental health and safety. Executing these large projects like Draco must be done only after considering, thoroughly evaluating the potential benefits and risks to our community. Based on a recent analysis from the Erie Protectors, which utilizes publicly available data and drilling data from the state, also the permit application for Draco, the development, in my opinion, should be categorized as a large-scale experiment at best. So why do I believe this? The data and historical experience presented by Extraction is intentionally misleading. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA, the industry standard is to drill wells that are 1 to 3 miles in length. While there is no doubt a trend towards longer wells, the data that we have and that we've looked at says they do not have enough experience to develop wells at this length, given this population density. For example, these would be not only the longest wells drilled in Colorado, but in the United States. And in fact, they just celebrated the completion of a 4-mile-long drilling project, which was their longest to date, and that was in their second quarter 24 update. To be clear, they are not choosing this location because it's optimal for their project. They are choosing it because they have no other options. They are unable to access hydrocarbons due to regulations imposed by Boulder County and the town of Erie, which are in place to protect their people and the environment. Their lack of experience at this scale, coupled with the hazards associated, such as intersecting oil and gas wells, a rapidly expanding community footprint, all bring into question their ability to execute this project safely. Outside of their ability to execute it safely, the impact will be permanent and unprecedented. This will permanently pollute about 1 billion gallons of water and bring significant harmful diesel truck emissions, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matter to our community air. Despite classifying drilling fluids as no more harmful than everyday household chemicals, we continue to learn about the hazards associated with fracking, and it's been linked to increased rates of cancer and respiratory health issues in local communities. So look, I realize this is a complex situation, and there's intense friction between community and corporate interests. But as somebody who still works for a for-profit chemical company, I understand and relate to their motivations and their drivers. But it's time to realize that Erie is no longer undeveloped farmland at the intersection of Weld and Boulder County. It's rapidly expanding. It's a vibrant community full of citizens that should not have their rights to clean air and environmental protection infringed upon by continued heavy industry development. It's time we stop approving these environmentally destructive projects that prioritize shareholder profit over health and well-being of our residents. This should be an indisputable and fundamental right for all Coloradans. Thank you.
I just want to do a quick time. So, yeah, okay, great. So you're also part of this group. Okay, that would be great. We are up with the 10 minutes, but please provide your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. And glad to be with everybody tonight. As a community advocate around oil and gas issues since 2012, I've met and spoken with countless Erie residents about their experiences and concerns. I am strongly opposed to the Draco project in our heavily drilled town. I worry for the seniors like myself and for anyone suffering from cancer, respiratory, cardiac, and other conditions that can be caused or made worse by toxic exposures. I worry for the families raising their kids here. I worry for the future residents who, due diligence or not, are apt to be rudely awakened by the stress and uncertainty of having an oil and gas well for a neighbor. With hundreds of active and retired wells in our midst, Erie has already a heavy burden to bear. Adding to that burden would be a grave injustice. It's sobering if you consider the extent to which Erie has been compromised and exploited for its minerals. It's clear we need a safe and healthy environment in order to survive. We've seen that Civitas and its subsidiaries are careless and indifferent. We've seen that best management practices fall short, and that rules are next to impossible to enforce. We must question if it's enough to minimize and mitigate adverse impacts when the size and scope of the project are unprecedented in some respects, and the risks are not fully understood. In the face of all that and more, I do urge you to say no to Draco at next week's hearing, and thank you for listening to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take that. Appreciate it. All right, thank you. So we're going to transition now to individual comments folks who have signed up. So I think we're going to start with requester number 1. I think you all have cards of your number in the queue. So please kind of keep track of who's in front of you and be ready to come up to the podium when it is your turn. I don't know if I mentioned at the start, but I just also want to remind folks that we do have refreshments here for you. So as the night wanes on, please feel free to take advantage of that. And again, just another reminder that we want to be sure that we hear from everybody who's here tonight and wants to share some thoughts. And we only have this space for a limited amount of time, so we are going to from here ask folks to really help us with the 3 minutes. So when you do hear the buzzer, try to wrap up so that your fellow community members have their chance to speak as well. Anything else that we would like to talk about before we get going? All right, requester number 1, please. And here, one other item I will note is I will hold on to this one. You use this one, and then whenever you're finished, feel free to just leave it here on the podium.
Commissioners, thank you for coming. I'm a 12-year-old with multiple invisible disabilities. I live in a home that would sit atop one of the 26 wellbores. It has been my safe place. I want to share with you my lived experience as you consider the proposal for the drilling plan. I ask you to see this project through the lens of a disabled area resident like me. I have a sensitive immune system. Changes in the air and water quality have a profound effect on me. When air quality has been bad, I have spent days sick and exhausted in bed. Also, I am extremely sensitive to sound with my headphones. My brain still hears everything. The sounds from the heavy-duty trucks wake me up at night, and the sounds caused by the drilling are so loud. In nearby towns, vibrations from drilling rattled bathroom air vents. These homes were more than a quarter-mile away from the drilling site. Persistent loud sounds cause me to have panic attacks. The attacks don't stop until the sound stops. There are more than 1,500 disabled residents in Erie. Nearly all of Erie will be impacted by this project. I ask you to think about the impact on disabled residents as you consider this project. Please do everything you can to protect us.
Thank you. And speaker number 2, or requester 2. Thanks. And whoever is number 3, please feel free to come on up as number 2 is wrapping up. You don't need me to call you.
My name is Skylar Weitzel. I've lived in Erie since 2004. I'll admit I didn't know a lot about Erie's mining or oil and gas history when I moved here, probably because I was too distracted with the amazing view of the Front Range and all the open space. I remember seeing oil and gas equipment out in the middle of the open spaces on my way to I-25, and soon forgetting about them after they were beyond my rearview mirror when I went back into town. In the years since, those open spaces east of where we're at tonight have been developed with houses to the point that you can't even see the oil and gas equipment from Erie Parkway anymore, because they're mostly surrounded by homes and families with children. New families with young children playing outside in the yard, running through the sprinklers in the summer, while many of them have no idea what the potential health dangers that lurk below the surface of their nicely landscaped yards. In the last week, there have been multiple town notifications for oil and gas spills in Erie that we know of. The 5 wells that are currently leaking crude oil and other contaminants into the soil are all from wells that are owned and operated by Civitas, the same company that's trying to drill the longest known horizontal wells in the US under thousands of Erie residents. As of October 23, the longest lateral section drilled in North America was 24,166 feet, located in West Virginia. The International Association of Directional Drilling website says, and I quote, "Boring further and further to extract such supplies leads to more technical difficulties and geologic uncertainties," end quote. If the size of this project and the length of the proposed drilling wasn't enough, they will be attempting to do this while navigating the gauntlet of subterranean mine shafts and the graveyard of capped and or abandoned wells that were left to spill and leak into the soil by their previous owner before those assets were sold and resold to different oil and gas companies like mortgage portfolios before the housing crash in 2008. Those in support of oil and gas like to say that Colorado is one of the most highly regulated states when it comes to environmental regulations for oil and gas. Yet they fail to mention that the state has very few resources to enforce those regulations. We're in the middle of a drought in Colorado, and I can't see any logical reason to allow the use and permanent destruction of at least 500 million gallons of water for this project. The water will be rendered permanently useless due to the chemicals and contaminants and will no longer be viable for residential or even agricultural use. Toxic. The Draco pad is a future environmental disaster that can still be avoided if the ECMC does the right thing and puts a stop to this catastrophe before it begins. And I'll finish with this. Imagine if we had all grown up in a world that used wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, and then someone tried to convince us that punching massive holes in the earth, wasting billions of gallons of water, and burning fossil fuels was the best way to power our electric grid. Imagine how crazy that would sound. Thank you.
Thanks. Number 3. Great. Oh, maybe not. Number 4. Thanks. Come on up.
Come on up. It looks like no 3.
Okay.
Number 5 on deck.
Yep, number 5 is on deck. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Deborah Segaloff, a resident of Boulder County. I have a PhD in biochemistry, and I'm a retired biomedical research scientist who was a professor of physiology at the University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine, and a member of our medical center's Cancer Center. I currently serve on the board of PSR Colorado, which is the Colorado chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and PSR Colorado. We request that you deny the Draco pad drilling application for 26 new fracking wells. The proposed Draco pad would cause 30,000 plus men, women, and children in homes, schools, community centers, etc. in Erie to be exposed to the hazardous air pollutants generated by these fracking wells. The airborne contaminants from fracking include known carcinogens and endocrine disrupting compounds. A multitude of studies have demonstrated adverse health effects due to fracking. Such health effects include, but are not limited to, cancer, worsening childhood asthma, increased risks of premature births and other high-risk births, increased rates of stillborn births, and increased rates of babies born with birth defects. Additional adult health harms due to fracking include increased rates of hospitalization for cardiac, neurological, urological, cancer-related, and skin-related problems. While the greatest health risks are for those within a 2,000-foot radius surrounding a fracking well, that does not mean that the health risks magically disappear beyond 2,000 feet. Air travels. In one study, investigators found an association between certain birth defects and the proximity of maternal residents to drilling and fracking operations as far as 6.2 miles. This distance translates to a very real health risk for Erie. In addition, the fracking wells in the Draco pad will only worsen the ozone days in the Weld and Boulder counties, both of which already are rated F in the American Lung Association's State of the Air 2024 report. In short, there is no way to justify the increased risk to public health that the Draco pad would pose. As such, I and PSR Colorado ask that you deny the Draco pad drilling application for these 26 new wells. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Number 5. Great. Number 6, you're on deck.
Bear with me. I decided to talk. So here goes. Because I was only notified this past week on Wednesday that this was even a proposal. That was something coming through my neighborhood. I moved to Candlelight Ridge, and I'm going to have channels right under my house. Not something that I looked at when I decided to buy my very expensive forever home. I'm a retired nurse, and I am concerned for the health and safety of all people. I live in Boulder County. I bought my house thinking that there's no drilling here, so I'm safe. I realized I didn't own the metal below my house. But that didn't seem like that was going to be a problem. So my career as a nurse began as an oncology nurse. Now that's a long time ago, but still, I worked all over the country working in cancer centers. I've worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering, Johns Hopkins, the University of Oregon, and I've taken care of a lot of people that died because of the results, as we kind of see in the past of their lives, that somewhere it was in areas that may have affected them. I'm concerned that the channels that go underneath my home, can you please tell me, are there going to be potential earthquakes? I lived in California. I know what they feel like. But is it really necessary to cause them? Where will that water come from? We live in a drought. We pay a lot for our own personal water. And where is it, and why would you want to waste water? Where is it going to go? I'm concerned that there's going to be toxic fumes. There's noise pollution. And what about all the habitats that are in place? There's a lot of homes that are there. There's a lot of planning, that future homes, we've seen a lot going up. But what about us? We're already there. And doesn't anybody care about us? We see and are going to see a lot more people speak today. And I've talked to so many people, my mouth is way dry. So thank you very much. Please deny this and let us continue with the beautiful Colorado that I moved to.
Thank you. Thank you, number 6. Number 7, you're on deck.
Thank you, guys. My name is Sean Moulton. I've lived in Colorado for 14 years, and in February of this year, I sold my home in the East Washington Park neighborhood of Denver and moved to Erie. Specifically, I purchased a home in the Westerly development. I chose the development for its timeless architecture, parks, open space, and diverse housing options. I selected the premier builder in part due to their use of energy-efficient systems, high-grade insulation, and pre-installed solar panels to offset electricity usage. Moving here has been great. The Southern Land Company has done a fantastic job creating Westerly. I feel fortunate to live in Colorado. Governor Polis and the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission have implemented the most robust set of oil and gas regulations in the United States. These strict regulations ensure that individuals, communities, and the environment are protected, while responsible oil and gas operators produce energy that we all need. I chose Westerly because it was in Weld County. As a longtime Colorado resident, among other things, I find Weld County's commitment to responsible oil and gas development important for many reasons. Those reasons include the environment. Clean burning natural gas is far superior to coal for electricity generation. Drilling and completion practices are well regulated to reduce noise, lower greenhouse gas emissions, and minimize disruption. Long-term emissions monitoring requirements ensure the safety of our neighborhood long after the work is done. Taxes. $1.9 billion of tax revenue was generated from oil and gas in 2022. $432 million of that went to schools. Jobs. Colorado's diverse economy benefits everyone who lives here. The diversity drives property prices in neighborhoods like Westerly. Oil and gas supported 7.7% of all jobs in Colorado in 2021. Energy security. An inclusive view of energy is required for security and sustainability. With all of its energy efficient options, my home in Westerly still has 2 gas furnaces, a gas fireplace, an on-demand gas water heater, a gas cooktop, and a gas outdoor fire pit to enjoy those Colorado evenings. As a Westerly resident, I would like to ask the Commission to approve the Extraction Draco OGDP and allow Civitas to develop this site following all oil and gas regulations. I would also ask Civitas to work with the Southern Land Company to go above and beyond to minimize the impact to residents in both the short term and the long term, while safely developing energy resources. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Number 7. Right. Thanks.
Make sure I don't get this too close to me. Well, I think it's probably pretty obvious why a lot of us are here, why my wife and I are here. I don't support the Draco projects. I'm kind of upset, maybe borderline angry that I even have to be here talking about this today. The other thing I don't support is the exploitation of a loophole that is allowing fracking in one county to go into another county. I bought in another county for a reason, keep it out of my backyard. The other thing too is unincorporated into Erie. I know there's a lot of Erie residents that do live well that don't want this here. Earlier this year, my wife and I moved back from North Carolina. She, a Colorado native, decided it was time to move home, put down our roots, and start our family. We had a few simple rules about where we want to live and find our forever home. It's community, walkability, proximity to our beautiful mountains that we have, and in a safety and healthy environment for my family, my current family, and my future family. We almost made an offer over in Morgan Hill in the Lennar community. We also fell in love with the Westerly community, and I even got the opportunity to talk with VP of Construction for an extended period of time. Ultimately, due to Weld County's stance on fracking and gas and oil, we said no, and we moved down the street to Boulder County in the Markdale neighborhood. Moving to that neighborhood, talking to a lot of us, many of us moved out there to avoid those implications, the same implications that a lot of people here have been talking about today. Health and safety, earthquakes. Myself, also a California native, knows how an earthquake can impact communities. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to have to deal with paying for the insurance on it, right? Are we going to hold these companies responsible for the impact that they would make if they allowed this to happen? I don't want to talk about the waste of water in a state where the Colorado River is drying up. I don't want to have to talk about my future family possibly being early born, being in NICU because of all the impacts of what it is on your family. But a few things here, right? I urge the ECMC to respect the wishes of its citizens that are wanting protection from fracking and to shut this project down. Respect us who chose to not live in Weld County, to not have welding in our backyard. I and my wife don't want to be part of this experiment. The other thing I want to bring up after hearing a little bit earlier today is I don't believe we should have to rely on a gas and oil company to fix our poorly plugged wells, and the state needs to be better at that.
Number 8.
Hi, my name is Linda Foose, and I live in Erie, and my house sits right above one of those lines if it was approved. And so I was wondering if you have asked yourself, what could possibly go wrong with this colossal project? So I was thinking, let's start with the definition of fracking. Fracking is a technique involving fracturing formations in bedrock, something which my house sits on, by a pressurized liquid. The process involves a high-pressure injection of fracking fluid into a wellbore to create cracks in the deep rock formations through which natural gas, petrol, and brine will flow more freely. So as the earth tries to adjust to these unseemly pressures it has to adjust to, it's going to have to adjust right up through the earth to our houses, creating fractures. So I was wondering, if this project gets approved, who is going to pay for the fractured foundations of our houses? And you know it's not going to be the oil company. So then who would be responsible for fixing all this? And so I guess we would need to be looking at you guys, because if the project gets approved and this happens, then you would be liable because you knew the risks that were involved. Okay, so what about the unintended consequences? The operators cannot completely control where fractures occur. When a fracture extends farther than intended, it can link up with a naturally occurring fault, other natural or man-made fractures, and other wells that carry fluids to other geological formations, including drinking water supplies. So what is the company going to say when our drinking water gets poisoned? Are they going to say, whoops, we didn't intend for that to happen. We're just going to poison 1 billion gallons of water for other people. We didn't intend for you to get it. And then what are they going to say when our house foundations crack? Whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to crack your house foundation. And then the oil company is asking for exceptions to the 2,000-foot setback rule. So if the project is approved, what other exceptions would they ask for after it gets going? I'm kind of wondering about that. Flaring, perhaps? What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate that you are here in Erie to listen to our concerns. My name is Emily Miller. I live in Flatiron Meadows on the Boulder County side of Erie and one of the neighborhoods affected by the proposed horizontal lines. I have 2 children who attend school at Meadowlark, which is also within the neighborhood. First, I am very concerned about the cumulative impact of another extractive project so close to developed areas. The director's recommendation highlighted the severity of the existing pollution and proximate oil and gas pressure in Erie. Page 4 of that document notes that Erie is in the 99th percentile for air toxic emissions, 98th for other air pollutants, 99th for proximity to active oil and gas locations, 86th for prevalence of cancer, and 84th for population under 5. These numbers are staggering. This means there are virtually no other census blocks in the state of Colorado subject to worse air quality than ours. I call upon you to emphasize the health and safety portion of your mission and seriously evaluate the health impacts of this project. It received little attention in the recommendation and in Civitas' cumulative impacts plan, which contains no data on emission forecasts. Civitas noted in its application that this location was most protective of health, safety, and welfare. I find this disingenuous, especially considering the other sites were just red herrings. They simply weren't as easy to get approved. Second, I am concerned about the 87 active and inactive wells in the path of the horizontal bores, including the young 623 that Mr. Frank pointed out earlier, which is 100 yards from my home and uphill from Meadowlark School. There must be individualized plans for each of these existing wells in the drilling spacing unit, not just the 22 that Civitas has committed to capping. We ask for monitoring and repair of older plugged and abandoned wells. We deserve specifics on how they are avoided, realistic, time-bound mitigation strategies, higher insurance requirements for Civitas to protect us if something terrible happens. Even if the likelihood is low of hitting one of these vertical wells, the consequence is great. My kids deserve to go to school without disruption, like those kids in Frederick who are dealing with that, and breathe reasonably clean air. This proposal pushes the limits of the applicant's capabilities. They have never drilled 5 miles. Longer horizontals require a lot more water. The ECMC's cumulative impacts report noted that Front Range producers underestimate the amount of water by 30%. Civitas' only motivation for this distance is profit and convenience. There are no benefits to us in Erie, only risks and long-term burdens. The fact that they would not be fracking the first mile and a half gives me no comfort given the hazards in the way. Their objective, according to the August 2024 earnings call, is a strategic focus on cost reduction and shareholder returns. How can we trust that these efficiencies will be applied to our safety? Please look beyond the completeness of the application. Consider the deeper, long-lasting impact on our community's health and vitality. We are counting on you to protect us. Thank you.
Lost track of the numbers. We think we're 9.
10.
I lost track too.
Thanks.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I'm talking mainly for you. Thanks for listening. My name is Sarah Cornelli. I reside in Grandview neighborhood in Erie. I have a background in environmental planning from the University of Wisconsin. We have a huge ethical dilemma in front of us. What is being proposed is 26 wells spanning through a quarter of Erie's existing population. Currently, that is approximately 10,000 people. Through wells and mines that have already been drilled, apparently we're finding out about ones we didn't even have record of. Not to mention a residential development that was started before the Draco pad was proposed, so that number will grow. Homes, schools, parks, and businesses at a length that was never drilled to before in Colorado. Apparently, this is a brand new thing. Erie has the fortune of belonging to one of the most stringent and one of the most lax counties in regards to oil and gas development. When communities reside in 2 counties like this, it is only ethical to respect the wishes of the community. The town of Erie has set its standard, a 2,000-foot setback, which is already
being disregarded by the proposed Draco pad. At a time when the US has a surplus, I do not feel a project of this magnitude has enough justification to disregard the town's wishes. No one can honestly say the Draco pad doesn't pose a greater risk than a standard fracking operation. Shouldn't take an engineer to tell you that, though I'm sure they will, or they already have. The resources are there, but just because they exist doesn't mean we need to storm through them now. A project of this magnitude, complexity, and risk, no matter how you spin it, should be a last resort resource. Sidelining an entire community's wishes when there is not an urgent need proves to me that there is no line that oil and gas development won't cross. I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now. Let the technology of fracking continue to become more efficient and safer. Let the need be greater than the risks that are being proposed. We're gonna need it someday. It's down there. We're not, we're gonna run out of oil and natural gas. It's gonna get harder to find. But it's readily available now. They've got all kinds of projects going. We've got plenty of gas coming in. Leave our town alone. Thanks.
Thank you.
I wanted to be way smoother than that, by the way. Number 11?
Get out of here. Yeah. So be waiting when it's your turn to talk ahead of time. There you go.
Okay, I'm 11 in case anyone else lost track of the numbers. Hi, my name is Kate Christensen. Some of you I know really well from before. Thank you for being in our neck of the woods. I live not in Erie, but I am kind of in that corner there. Those two Mary Miller wells are the ones that I bike next to with my kids going to school every day. We're here because we want to know if this Draco OGDP meets the threshold to protect human health, welfare, the environment. It doesn't. I'm sorry. I know everyone spent a long, long time working on this, and it's really painful when you spend years on a project where staff and the operator are trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. But we heard about today wells that the state didn't even know about. I remember, I've been working on the fracking for a little bit. I remember when the house blew up in Firestone. I remember when it filled up with methane because of an improperly capped flow line, and Erin Martinez was gravely ill, and her husband and her brother died. I can totally imagine in this 5-mile area a well that we don't know about, just like the other ones that the city of Erie brought up, causing another tragedy. There's too much risk here. Plus, it doesn't pass the smell test. I've heard plenty of alternative site analysis over the years, and industry says we can't do more than 2-mile laterals. Suddenly we can do 5? That makes zero sense. And I want to tell you a little bit about my neighborhood right over here. I've lived in Colorado for close to 25 years, but I've lived in this neighborhood 10. We talk a lot about the science, but I can tell you on my street, just the houses I can see from my front door, not my entire neighborhood. There are 2 kids with Down syndrome. My next door neighbor, her baby had to be in the NICU because of an aneurysm in her brain. There's a kid with autism, a kid with a hearing loss. The kids who go to Meadowlark, one of them gets migraines, the other gets nosebleeds. I don't know all the kids on my block, but I can tell you probably about half have special needs. I don't know that it's all because we've been downwind of all this fracking for all these years, but my neighbor, one of my neighbors with a kid with Down syndrome, she got pregnant when she was a teacher at Red Hawk. When they got fracked, I think it was 2015, it was an ad for Patagonia. She told me about all the teachers who were trying to get pregnant at that time and how many had miscarriages. And it doesn't pass the smell test anymore. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, number 12 and 13, please stand up and get ready to jump in.
Hi, I'm Dan Raisler. First, thank you for taking the time to be here and to hear our concerns. I'm grateful for your role in protecting public health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife resources. It's very important. I'm also here because I share the concerns of other area residents and want to express my opposition to the proposed project. I have a negative visceral reaction to the hazards associated with fracking, hazards that you know better and that have already been listed. But I'd like to what's already been mentioned, I'd like to add one more, and that is the disposal of otherwise banned, because some contaminated exploration and production waste is federally exempted, will wind up in the Front Range landfill. Just as you're aware of all of those hazards, you're also aware that Extraction Oil and Gas Incorporated and Crestone, both subsidiaries of Civitas, operate 7 of the 10 facilities most frequently cited during the last 14 years for air quality, noise, odor, and other complaints. Extraction and its parent company have demonstrated that profits matter more than public safety, that they are not good stewards, and that they are not worthy of your or the public's trust. To this point, Extraction's request that it be granted an exception to the noise pollution rule and a waiver to the wetlands and wildlife rule underscores its disregard for compliance with safeguards meant to protect humans, wildlife, and the environment. Now, a probably irrelevant digression. The name Draco puzzles me. Draco, who presumably lived in the 7th century BCE, was the first to establish a written code of law in Greece. Virtually every transgression of his code of law resulted in the death penalty. But Draco is also slang for the Romanian-made pistol derived from the AK-47. And finally, there's Draco Malfoy, the antagonist of Harry Potter. With such malevolent associations, I would like to know why Extraction would burden our community for decades with a name like that. On the other hand, Extraction is well named. They will come in and extract oil and gas at minimal benefit to Erie and its residents. No local hiring boom, no major enduring infrastructure development. The owners and investors will be well rewarded for creating a badly named, decades-long toxic facility that down the road, if history is any guide, Erie will be left to deal with. I urge you, as the protectors of public health, safety, welfare, and environment and wildlife resources, to reject Extraction's proposal. Doing otherwise makes a mockery of the public trust that has been placed in you. Thank you.
Thank you. 13. Number 14, please stand up and be ready to.
That's me, I'm ready.
All right. You're 14? Are we on 14? 13, great.
Well,
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a different, just on this. You guys, I hear your story. I'm from St. Aurora Reservoir. I was at the last meeting you had with us down there, and thank God, actually, we get to have a voice now, because we never did in the past. The scientist that was up here earlier, he said we have to find a mutual way of working with the shareholders and us. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm sorry. I have nothing in common with a shareholder for some billion-dollar gas company. And I'm a grandma. I'm a pissed off grandma. And I have one thing to say to you 5 and whoever else is missing. Shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, and shame on you if you let this go through. Are you listening to these people? This isn't, oh my God, we're taking snowballs and lighting them on fire. This is scientific fact. It's fact. And you're letting greed, I don't know who the hell's getting paid off. Somebody is. And I don't know who it is, but this doesn't make any sense. Shame on you if you let this go through.
Thank you. Number 14. 15, please go ahead and stand up and be ready. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for having this session tonight. My name is Randy Willard. I am a concerned citizen of the state of Colorado. I am pleased that we're here to be able to share our concerns tonight. Tonight I'm going to address the environment in which this Draco project is being evaluated. The ECMC has been made gatekeeper of our environment, our air, our water, and at a certain level on how we can participate in our lives due to the ozone. For years, Colorado encouraged the growth of oil and gas industry while we watched the broader industry flex its muscles and spend large quantities of cash painting a picture of a good and clean industry that was simply working to produce cheap gas for Americans. During this time, the industry worked its way into the processes and the persons and the governments that were to regulate them. The industry went nuts, having found friends in Weld County that were more willing to permit and permit and permit while their county became an industrial hellscape. Just drive up US 85 or Weld County Parkway and you can see it. Hell, look as you go home tonight, you can see it here in Erie. The evidence is here in this area as well as the complications, and we've heard that tonight from people. This expansion, without concern for people or place, laid the groundwork for Senate Bill 19181, a groundbreaking piece of legislation which provided a voice for both people and place in the regulation of the industry. Once the state got around to implementing the bill in mid-2021, the industry got its hackles up and environmental justice groups felt vindicated. Over the next few years, as groups like this one in Erie and others across the state started to see what the bill would provide to keep our communities safe from the proven harms of this industry, the industry has continued to expand as fast as they can, possibly, leaving in its wake thousands of abandoned wells to the tune of over $1 billion to the citizens of the state of Colorado. Meanwhile, our air quality, surely one of the drivers of this legislation, has continued to become worse and worse, reaching a level which has incurred a direct intervention from the EPA. The industry wants you to believe that it's cars that are causing the ozone issues, but facts suggest that over 60% of this ozone comes directly from the industry, with 45% of it coming from Weld County alone, filtering down along the entire Front Range. In fact, since the new, since SB 19181 rules were put in place, the Commission has in fact improved 250% more wells than they did previously. So where does this leave us tonight? To me, it leaves us with a simple decision. Is it time for people in place to trump the billions of dollars the industry throws at local and county governments? Is it time for our government to protect us rather than suggesting we should be okay when this project is implemented? I think it's high time for the ECMC and the rest of the agencies of the state to take a look at themselves as citizens of the state rather than employees of the industry and support themselves and all of us. Thank you for your time.
We're on 15 now, so 16 you're up next.
Good evening. Commissioners, thank you for being here. I'm sincerely grateful for your willingness to listen. My name is Sandra Dugan, and I speak on behalf of the Colliers Hill Oil and Gas Monitoring Group, a neighborhood not far from this proposed pad. We all know that oil and gas is a bad neighbor. We also know that Civitas is a particularly bad neighbor. As an Erie resident who has been disproportionately impacted by fracking, I know that these OPGDs are torturously loud, unsightly, and inherently toxic. We have evidence that these activities are dangerous to public health and the environment and the climate cycle. According to the Compendium of Scientific, Medical, and Media Findings demonstrating risks and harms of unconventional gas and oil extraction, as fracking operations in the US and abroad have increased in frequency, size, and intensity, a significant body of evidence has emerged to demonstrate that these activities are dangerous in ways that cannot be mitigated through regulation. Threats include detrimental impacts on water, air, stability of our climate, public health, farming, property values, and economic viability. For these reasons, residents have gathered here tonight. You heard Mr. Frank assure you that the town is doing everything they can to make sure that Draco is quote-unquote safe, and I don't deny them that. But I assure you that no fracking operation, let alone a massive monster like this one, can ever be safe, ever. Let me be clear, anyone speaking in favor of this path likely has financial stake in poisoning us. The least impactful route is to deny this OGPD entirely. Anything short of that is an invitation to poison, traumatize, and exploit us for profit. Thank you. Number 16.
Great, yep, and as you heard, 17, you're next. Hi there. My name is Darby Vernon. I'd like to thank you for being here today and letting us all have the opportunity to speak. My house is right in the center of that big outlined area, which is a little terrifying. But I'm lived here for 4.5 years, and this is the first home I've ever purchased, and I was really looking forward to starting a family here, and hopefully I will still feel comfortable doing so. I'm an engineer, and I have experience with software and consumer robotics, and I also come from a family of NASA engineers. So I think I understand a few things when it comes to risk. I know that risk cannot be completely avoided, but I also have doubts when I hear Civitas say that they've minimized this risk. And I have a hard time believing minimized risk means drilling under the homes of 10,000 people under 87 abandoned wells and choosing a moving target, which the city or the town of Erie is, as we are one of the highest growing towns in Erie, or in Colorado. This doesn't sound like minimized risk to me. And also these oil wells, they are, they're the longest in the country apparently, which I just learned today, but highly believe. And to me, you don't just put 10,000 people on a new airplane just because the one 3/5 the size flew just fine. And no matter how minimal the risk, what damages could potentially be done in a worst case scenario? And that is a part of minimizing risk. You don't minimize risk by ignoring what could potentially happen in a bad case scenario. As a software engineer, if you want to minimize risk, you understand that one day the hacker might get into the computer. If you're working on airplanes, you understand that maybe the engine will fail and make sure that the plane can still fly. And if you're drilling oil wells, you need to make sure that you're not going to do this under everybody's house. And one other thing I wanted to bring up, this has been brought up a few times, that Civitas claims that this is the only place they can drill. I have a hard time believing that as well, given that only a year ago, they just got out of a lengthy legal battle with Boulder County in a place that had no homes over it, entirely over mineral rights. So I find it somewhat weird that the next best place has an entire town over it that Boulder County may have less.
Uh-oh.
You cut me off?
No.
They're after me. You don't want to speak?
No, it sounds like the buzzer did go off, but if you want to wrap up here, I'll give you this one. We'll see this one.
Thank you. Underneath a town that Boulder County may have a harder time legally defending. Thank you.
Thanks.
Number 17.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Paul Coleman. I'm from Boulder County, but actually from the city of Boulder. I drove out here to visit my neighbors. Normally I get up and I would talk to the commission about climate change. That's my big concern. So I'm really opposed to any oil and gas development. We don't need it in Colorado. So 3/4 of the gas we produce goes out of state. 1/2 of the oil we produce in Colorado goes out of state. We don't need any more development. But then I'm really glad we left this diagram up here. That shows oil wells development from the past. We don't know how many wells are out there. This is crazy. Fracking is going to go underneath these tens of thousands of people's homes and schools and stores and parks, and it's going to fracture the rock. That's what fracking does. It fractures the rock. We don't know where those fractures are going to go, where they're going to meet up with the old oil wells that are already out there. We don't know where all the old oil wells are. This is, as a previous speaker talked about risk, this is crazy. So And for all you people out here, this is not the end of a process. This is beginning. Keep after them. The town of Erie is doing a great job showing up here. I love it. Keep showing up. Show up at the ECMC. Let them know what you think. Thank you.
18 is up. Great, thanks. We're on 18. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm number 18, so 19 will be after me. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. Welcome to Erie. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Emily Baer. I am a council member in the town. I'm also an impacted resident from oil and gas development near my home, a mother to children who have suffered health impacts from that development, and a force-pooled mineral rights owner. Sometimes I tremble when I talk about this. It's a trauma response that I have had to come to terms with when I speak, because this is so important for me to show up on these tables. But please don't disengage, lean in, we're in this together. Council member Tim Barnes from the city of Lafayette asked to be included and lends his support to my comments, and I thank him for his support. I'm so glad you've come to Erie and get to experience our beloved community. We love our big little town, as you can hear. I'm so glad you get to see and hear from our residents. It's hard to raise your hand as an impacted person. It requires a special and brave kind of vulnerability to speak up when you are targeted and implore those in seats of power to see you and make decisions that protect your family. And that is why we're here today. To elevate these voices, I implore you to meet them with compassion, concern, and curiosity, and to demonstrate this when you make decisions about Draco. Several Erie community members, myself included, advocated for the passage of Senate Bill 181 in 2019, fatigued by the impacts we suffer and frankly desperate for ways to protect our families. After Senate Bill 181 passed, we plugged in during the process to rewrite Erie's Chapter 12 in our UDC and apply the newfound authority Senate Bill 181 afforded local governments to protect our neighborhoods. I have remained engaged throughout the Commission's rulemaking process, including mission change, which were, quote, Colorado's first ever rules to be adopted that incorporate environmental justice as a consideration in facility siting, end quote. In addition to Erie's protective local regulations, the town created an Energy and Environment Department and deployed air quality monitoring, prioritizing them in our budget as a reflection of our values to protect our residents. Despite our best efforts, the industry circumnavigates our intentions by going just outside our town borders and plans to frack the entire width of our town underneath neighborhoods and through dozens and dozens of plugged and abandoned wells, some located under homes and driveways, and mature trees and rose bushes in backyards. The Draco application highlights the inadequacies of the state's safety measures given the industry's emerging technology. We need better mechanisms to understand risks, and the safety of our residents must be assured. This type of production, length of laterals beneath miles of homes through dozens of plugged and abandoned wells, have never been attempted. Please do not volunteer Erie as the test subject. If the Commission applied its rules considering cumulative impacts, air quality within a mile, water within 2.5 miles of the site, Draco could not move forward. There is precedence to pause and apply the cumulative impacts rulemaking to this application. Applications were paused at every stage after Senate Bill 181 and held to the director's objective criteria so that considerations could be made with new regulations. We, the impacted people, need the state to uphold the intent of mission change and incorporate environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on 19, so 20, you're up next.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Sarah Amodio, and I'm an Erie resident. I've been an Erie resident since 2004. I currently live right smack dab in the middle of that little box there. And excuse me while I try to get my name situated here. There's no real place to put it. I currently live right next door to well 124. And it is a plugged and abandoned well that was just recently plugged and abandoned right there. In 2015, early 2016, I was diagnosed with a disease called eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis. This is a disease that is characterized by high levels of eosinophils, which are a white blood cell. And as numerous medical research has proven, eosinophils are directly impacted by high levels of benzene. I was diagnosed at Johns Hopkins University, and I'm currently being treated by doctors at the Mayo Clinic and at Vanderbilt University for my disease. It has been a long-standing thing for my disease where they suspect that there is a correlation, causation correlation, we can get into that debate, that there is a correlation between my disease and my proximity to this well and the exposure to the toxins from this well. This past year, as David Frank is very well aware, well 124 was quite the cluster F. We went through quite a bit to get that plugged up, and approximately 120 tons of contaminated soil right in my backyard was removed. The process of digging that up dug up just a bunch of stuff into the air, and that flew right into my house since I sit directly west from that well. So I say this to you as someone that is impacted directly by Civitas. They are a bad faith actor, period. They did not do right by well 124. They did not do right by me. As a result of this digging that took place in this past year, I had to increase my chemo and go on a very unusual regimen that they've never done before through Mayo Clinic and the Vanderbilt Vasculitis Center. As a result, I am paying $20,000 every 2 months for this chemo treatment. Do you think Civitas is paying for that? Hell no. I am being directly impacted by this. I am putting a face to the health risks associated with this. And I want you to see this face. And I want you to know that when I was first diagnosed, I was given 5 years to live. I have 2 daughters, and I've been a long-time Erie resident. I don't want to see anyone else go through what I have gone through. I'm a former school principal. I don't want to see any of the other kids in this community going through what I have gone through. So I implore you, do not do this project. Thank you.
Next is number 20.
I am Bill Hughes, and we just moved to Erie, but I am a urban planner. I was 15 years planning in Kansas City. I worked for Howard Needles Engineering Company. I was a planning director of Lakewood, and this is the first time I've been to the hearing. I've only lived here a month. So just reading through what I've seen here, in my experience is that if you're having trouble with these companies up front, and they won't accept the responsibility of what's going on, and they're not willing to do it, that's only the beginning of the problems. This is just the experience that we've had. This is the only time that you can get these solved, and if they won't even act like they exist, you have to turn them down. My experience is that it comes back and bites you as long as you work for these companies and work for the city. Okay, thank you.
And coming up is number 21, so number 22, you're next.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Friends, neighbors, thank you all for being here. I'm Alan Miller. I am a medical oncologist. I take care of people with cancer. I have my MD degree. I have a PhD in physiology. Prior to moving to Erie 8 years ago, I was Cancer Center Director at the Baylor Salmons Cancer Center in Texas. In the 1700s, I wasn't here then, but in the 1700s, Sir Percival Potts, studying scrotal cancer in chimney sweeps, established the link between hydrocarbons in the form of soot and cancer. There's a clear link between hydrocarbons, petroleum, and cancer. Prior to being at Baylor, I was the assistant director at Tulane in New Orleans. And in Louisiana, it was very clear that there's something called Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is a real thing associated with extraction and refinement of petroleums. About the only ones who doubt it are the petroleum industry. So we don't know with this project whether there will be 1,000 cases of cancer, 100 cases of cancer, or 1 case of cancer. But I've got to say, 1 will be too many. I assure you, those of us in the oncology field do not need more patients. There are enough patients out there. Just want to make some personal notes as well. Where we are in our house, we have an issue with groundwater. We have water that comes in through the ground into our sub-basement. We have a sump pump, and several times a day it pumps water out of our sub-basement. What's going to be in that water when those lines are running below us? We live directly across the street from Long Peaks Park. A couple of those lines run under Long's Peak Park, and every weekend when the weather is beautiful, as it is much of the year, there are dozens of children out there playing soccer and playing baseball. That's a great sight for leagues. We love seeing it. We love hearing the children. So we can't do this. We can't let it happen. You guys have got to step up and tell them no.
Thank you. That brings us to 22.
Thank you. I'm 22. My name is Richard Garcia, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself tonight. And that's also as a former school board member for Boulder Valley School District. We did build Meadow Lark Elementary and Middle School, not too far from here. And we had a hell of a time trying to get that school built because of the oil pad that was right next to it. And the only reason we built that school is because the oil company agreed to a setback that we were requiring before we put that building in place. But having heard all of the comments that we've heard here tonight, every one of the comments that I agree with the exception of one, wholeheartedly. And I also urge you, the commission, who has been appointed to make sure that we're safe and we're healthy in our communities, to not approve the Draco pad. The question that I have is, what do we value more, oil or water? If we're looking at the Draco pad, the same water supply for the Draco pad will come from the same water supply that Erie gets its water, the Big Thompson. It is estimated that this Draco pad is going to utilize or use 541 million gallons of water for 26 pads. The average household in Erie uses 84,000 gallons of water. So if you do simple math, this Draco pad is going to use enough water that will sustain 6,440 households in Erie. What's going to happen to the water that's being used? It's not reusable. So my concern is water. My concern is that is the most precious resource that we have in our planet. And if we're going to save our planet, we've got to save our water. So I urge you not to vote to approve the Draco pad. Thank you very much.
23.
Hello. Thank you for being here. Thank you to my mom, who always keeps informing me about what's going on, because shocker, you can't find this stuff in the news. You really have to dig for it, which is unfortunate, because this should be on the front page of all the papers, in my opinion. I'm a Colorado native, so I feel particularly protective over this state. I'm a small business owner here in Northern Colorado. We own 5 restaurants in Boulder and Denver area over the past 15 years. When we started our first restaurant, we had nothing. I lived with my mother, who lives here in Erie, for about 2 years until we could get our company started. 13 years later, we're the most decorated hospitality company in the state. This year, my husband and I won a James Beard Award for Outstanding Restaurateurs for the entire nation. We also took home 7 awards from the Michelin Guide, who came here in 2023. 2 of those awards we got 2 Michelin Awards for a Green Star, which is honored for your practices in sustainability, which is very important to our company. This means we spend a lot of time and money to resource locally and organically, even in some cases regeneratively, which I wish we were talking about tonight. So I get to spend a lot of time with farmers, and I'm so happy to support these hardworking people who are so important to our local economy and our environment. I'm also happy to provide clean local food to our guests. It's a high priority to make sure I'm sourcing the best clean food that contributes to the health of our population, because we believe food is medicine. If our environmental markers continue to decline, I will have to move our businesses. I will just find clean land, clean water, farmers that can practice their farming in a good way. Farming is so difficult as it is. Why would we make it harder for them to find clean soil and fight for clean water to actually feed people? This is not gonna feed people. This is gonna hurt people. And that's not smart. My husband and I live in a very small duplex in the city of Boulder through the low-income housing program. So amazing. Getting out of the housing program will be really difficult for us. So when we talk about buying outside of that community, we talk about Erie. We also talked about opening businesses in Erie, having restaurants in Erie, really adding to the local economy and local community here, bringing job opportunities and food consuming opportunities that I know that you would love. But as soon as I found out about this Draco expansion, I immediately thought, we can't live here. We can't open businesses here. This is not where I want to be. This is not where I want my son to play soccer. This is not where I want my mom to take long walks with our daughter. And there's way too much fracking here anyway. We need a lot of stuff to clean up before we talk about future things with oil and gas, because what I've heard tonight, unregulated wells still exist with 0 accountability. That's also not okay. We can't risk the possibilities of leaks, earthquakes, and decreased property values. We can't risk our hard-earned investment capital on a project that hasn't even been tested. The risk is just too high. I have a lot of other things to say, but I think I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so come on up. So number 24, and then I just have learned that we've had some additional folks sign up, which is wonderful. So after this, I think we'll just take a quick 5-minute break and then reconvene out with 25 after you.
I have to relieve my babysitter, so I'm grateful for
Great.
the opportunity to talk. Thanks all for coming out. I live in Colliers Hill, and I moved to Erie in 2020 from Chicago, where oil and gas wells in your backyard aren't a thing. I live with primary immune deficiency and asthma, which is why we chose Colorado to be able to work out outside. And now I battle intense anxiety from living in an essential oil field in Weld County. I am the mother of 2 young girls, and as a family, we have spent thousands on air purifiers for our home, and we get water delivered to our home as a way to mitigate some of the risks of the 300 plus active oil and gas wells in Erie. Since living in Erie, my older daughter has also developed asthma, and I seriously worry about my daughter's developing childhood cancer at some point. For myself, with a weak immune system, I'm also worried about the exposures I've already lived through. Toxic industries like oil and gas have no place being near our homes or our schools. And Draco will be in close proximity to both the Westerly development and Collier's Hill. In addition, it'll be adjacent to our town's only high school and our largest pre-K through 8. Our most sensitive population is our children, and they should not be breathing in those toxic BTEX chemicals or other carcinogens from the wells and the related pollution from the thousands of trucks that this project's going to require. Living in Collier's Hill, we've already lived through a nightmare just like this one. In 2021, we had 26 wells drilled only 900 feet from our homes. And we were promised the industry best standards, and let me tell you, it was still hellacious. We had residents with nosebleeds and migraines and constant trucks and odors and sleep disturbances from the otherworldly sound of the drilling. And the wells closest to the homes had severe combustion issues, and at one point had to be shut in. And who knows how long those were spewing uncombusted toxins. And I'm really worried about the crosstalk that those 5-mile well bores are gonna have, especially the ones located in people's literal backyards and front yards. This is an extremely risky project and not worth it. You cannot, in a good conscience, have heavy industry running through our growing town. The families in our town deserve so much better, and in terms of logistics, the main route to Vista Ridge and the main route to I-25 would encounter all these additional thousands of trucks. We just repaved both of those routes, so this is really crazy to think about. I wish I was home with my kids tonight instead of here with you, but I'm out here fighting for our health and safety. And I'm begging you, in order to protect the ECMC's mission to protect our public health and safety, to deny this pad. Thank you.
Great, thanks folks. So we are gonna just take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene here at 7 o'clock with number 25.
Half of the room here.
That's
great. Great. I don't know when you ready.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready. If you're ready.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Ott. Just like Emily, I live near Meadowlark School as well, and I am here speaking on behalf of myself, as another speaker said. Thank you for that idea. First, I want to say COGCC, to the commission. I would just highly suggest with XOG not to cut any corners. I have heard before, like, dot the I's and cross the T's, and I'd like to second that. Just being in the industry previously, I wouldn't give them any leeway or exceptions. Just like, really, let's hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they perform as they should. We all know, well, no, we don't all know, but extraction has a history of coming into these harder locations to drill, because that's where nobody else wants to drill. If this was like legacy PDC or Chevron drilling, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about a 5-mile lateral. One of the things that I feel is a misnomer, people say that we don't want to live in an oil and gas field. Well, newsflash, we already do. If you look at this flyer that was passed out, you can actually see the horizontal well bores. That's what these are here. So these are the horizontal well bores. I don't have any concerns. Living in this area, I have 0 concerns. Most of my concerns are going to be at surface hole location. However, my huge concern are these P&A'd or maybe sort of P&A'd wells. So if we're drilling a 5-mile lateral, that's going to take a lot more pressure to fracture these wells, to stimulate these wells. So I would like to suggest that this group advocate for 22 and even more wells to get P&A'd. I think that's where we need to put our resources. Sitting here and saying all these diseases and all this stuff, and there's going to be earthquakes. There's not going to be earthquakes. The only earthquakes that I'm aware of are saltwater disposal wells where you're re-injecting frac fluid into the ground in Oklahoma. That I'm from California too. I lived through the 1994 North earthquake. I don't want earthquakes. This is not a concern to me whatsoever. Surface hole location, there are, I wrote it down, 72 homes within 2,000 feet. They're not already built. People can choose to buy those houses or not. I'm not that concerned. I'm very concerned about these wells that need to be P&A'd properly. So one thing that I disagree with David with the town of Erie that he brought up is that he basically in his statement said to monitor, like, while drilling operations are happening. and then replug and stop operations. I prefer that we plug and abandon those wells safely now so that we don't have any issues when we're fracking the wells. I have a heck of a lot more to say, but I have 30 seconds. Let's go with the haul route. I would really like to see extraction enter into an agreement for the commission to actually pave that road, have that road paved, and then when the wells are completed and they're put online, let's repave that road and fix anything that we need. So let's make sure we're taking care of our community members in the ways that we can. Thank you for your time and thank you for being here.
Thank you. And we are on to 26, please. Did we lose 26? 27, you're up.
Tell people too that if they have the comments written and they run out of time, they can submit those in writing.
Great reminder, Commissioner Messner. Thank you. Let me just make one note to folks. If you are here and you need to leave because you're running out of time for whatever reason, and if your comments are written, please leave them with us and we will read them and enter them into the record. Thanks, and go ahead.
Mine's gonna be a little poetic. Money, 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 money for the corporation, money from the lobby, money from the pump, money from blood and poison. Human beings melted into money like Midas's daughter. What? For the price of land and taxes. Who can we mourn? Can we mourn the people of North Carolina and West Virginia racked by the hurricanes this season? The Native women who are going to be raped and murdered by the oil workers, as has been proven by, University of Cincinnati. The people of Erie who will face it directly, the victims of the Black Gold Rush. Are we supposed to mourn for them? Do you expect us to? Oil is dinosaurs, long dead. Are you serving this planet better alive or there? Will your decisions now improve the world? Will it slow climate change, shove corporate greed aside, or will you one day do far more good to the worms in your burial plot? Of course, assuming you don't get your memento mori. Remember, you will die, but also know that how your actions today may cause death beyond that. The creation of new oil infrastructure will poison the water, poison the air, poison the land, poison the workers. So violence against the women in their vicinities, and there is a clear association between murdered and missing women and the creation of oil. Your actions today may feel distant, but the negative, concrete consequences are not small. I could apologize for coming off as brash or rude, but I feel very little respect for anyone caught up in greed and heady profit that they ignore the consequences of their actions. You are a part of nature. You were born and you ate of her and grow, and you will get old and die. And 50 years later, your name will be forgotten by everyone who survived you, and will your children shiver in shame knowing what climate catastrophe you helped create? You might not live with the consequences of your actions in your lifetime. You may sit on this mountain and read only about the hurricanes, the wildfires, the oil spills, the tsunamis, and you will feel no guilt for the problem you worsened, the problem you chose to perpetuate. I hope every oil profiteer wakes up and feels all of the shame they deserve, and maybe that shame should be too much to handle. In 2023, the global CO2 concentration was 419 parts per million. 419. Last year. This year it's 422. In 1980, perhaps the last time a grifter or idiot politician could claim ignorance of climate change, it was 340. The decisions made over the past 40 years of ignorance, greed, or worse, pseudo-religious accelerationism have led to the climate crisis we face today. Do you study climate science? I do. It's my major. I learn in detail every day how the decisions made in the 20th century are collapsing every aspect of our climate stability. Believe me when I say climate collapse is approaching. Playtime is over. Memento mori and welcome to the future. Shame on anyone advocating for blind greed. Rot on earth and hope no one drills for you in a few million years.
Thank you. And 28. Thanks.
Good evening.
My name is Ben Hemphill. I'm a resident of Grandview. I'm a current candidate for Erie Town Council District 2, which a lot of this is a drill under, and Westerly is a neighborhood of that. I'm also a licensed professional mechanical engineer. With my background in complex mechanical systems, I know firsthand that systems under extreme stress are prone to failure. The proposed Draco pad development raises serious concerns for me, and it should for everyone here. From my reading and trying to understand the technical challenges of lateral drilling, I learned that 15,000-foot laterals are considered long. The Draco pad plan aims to drill laterals exceeding 25,000 feet, 167% of a long lateral. Achieving these extreme distances will require higher than typical power, pressure, and torque. I've experienced torque and pressure failures, and they are hard enough to resolve directly in front of me. I can't imagine the challenge when thousands of feet underground. These demands will push mechanical limits of the materials. The complex mechanics of drilling at this length and scale also induce heightened risks, including potential casing failures, increased emissions, and more intensive resource consumption. This project isn't just extensive, it's experimental. I do not want Erie to become a test site for the unknowns that come with drilling at such extremes. Last week, I sent a message to Civitas using their web form, asking about their experience drilling this far. I received no response, so I must assume that they have no experience. What's more concerning is this site's carefully selected location just outside of Erie's boundaries. This placement appears strategic, designed to sidestep any direct oversight from Erie's leadership and concerned citizens. Yet the impacts, air quality, potential groundwater contamination, and health risks won't stop at the town line. These operations are right on our doorstep, impacting our homes, schools, and public spaces. A development of this magnitude should not be forced upon our community without extensive input from Erie's residents and leaders. The stakes are too high, and so is the risk. If Civitas won't answer a simple question before operations, how will they respond to hard questions during operations? Tonight, I urge this commission to consider the very real concerns of this community. I ask that Erie's voice be heard and that our oversight be honored, and that we not allow our town to serve as an experimental testing ground for high-risk operations. A yes vote on this proposal at this stage reminds me of a movie quote. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're at 29. You're 30? All right, let's go to 30.
Hello, my name is Justin Brooks. I'm a resident of Erie for about 15 years, a little over. I live in the Grandview neighborhood, which is just as the dotted bold outcropping starts there right under what I consider the spatula that is running beneath the town of Erie. I'm also having a home built over in Westerly, which is pretty close to where the Draco well pad is located. And I rise not only for myself as a future impacted resident, but also for the portion of our 39,000 residents who live beneath, or above, I should say, this spatula. In addition to being one of these 39,000 neighbors, I also have the privilege of being the mayor of the town of Erie. And when I'm representing the 1,300 or so homeowners who are going to live in the Westerly subdivision, and the elementary school that's actually going to be adjacent to the Draco pad that was dedicated to St. Vrain, I'm a little concerned about how we handle the reporting, the halting of operations, and the immediate repair for any sort of spill or escape that we have. I often get the reports from the ECMC when those happen, and often those are long after they've actually been spilled, and we have very little data on how much, how long they will be down, and while that is taking place, operations continue. I think that we have an insufficient operational safety approach to managing the oil and gas operations that, honestly, that residential development has kind of encroached upon. So now we have a situation where we have oil wells, as you saw Mr. Frank point out earlier, who are right on top of or right beneath the homes that people are raising their families in. I have 4 children, and I don't want them to be concerned about becoming asthmatic or developing any type of mysterious illness. They're all athletes, they love being outside, and I am running out of things to say, honestly, to parents who have children who are impacted, or parents themselves who are impacted or having mysterious illness issues, who have very serious concerns with the value of their property, with oil and gas things that are happening, or as I call them, industrial accidents that are happening outside of their home. I tell them that the ECMC and the APCD are the 2 agencies that the state provides to regulate oil and gas extraction and also to ensure that we have quality air. The municipalities themselves were left relatively powerless with being able to enforce and halt operations when there is an active spill. I think there's a lack of urgency in the cleanup and repair. There's no active air quality monitoring or soil vapor monitoring for the various sites that we have in sight. There's really no incentive or sanction for cleanup. When one particular operator had a well that was leaking, they were busy cleaning up the 13 or so wells in southern Colorado that they were fined for not having taken good care of. Meanwhile, we have a KP Kaufman well up here in Erie that's steadily leaking and not being fixed. These are things that there's no excuse for it. On behalf of myself, my 4 children, and my 39,000 neighbors, I ask that Civitas not experiment beneath our community. I ask that the ECMC and APCD support municipalities with close oil and gas operations by either requiring real-time monitoring or halting all operations when there's an active spill in need of cleanup. Oil and gas drilling has no place within or beneath residential neighborhoods. There are areas further away from town, and there's no supply shortage in this country. Natural gas, we export about 20.9 billion cubic feet per day, and that was a record set in 2023, up 10% from the year before. So with there not being a shortage of supply, I understand the value of being able to utilize natural gas, but it is not worth risking the health and safety of our residents and our children. So I ask you to please not approve this.
Thank you. Next up is 31.
Hello, friends. Good evening, and thank you for being here. It's been a long time. I remember traveling the state with some of you as we went through the rulemaking for subsequent to SB 181. My name is Sarah Laughlin, and I'm the Mayor Pro Tem and former Executive Director of a little organization called the League of Oil and Gas Impacted Coloradans. But I'm a cancer survivor, and most importantly, I'm a mom. I live in Flatiron Meadows, and I will start by telling you I was involved with the creation and the passage of Senate Bill 181 and every subsequent rulemaking up until 2021 when I changed jobs. So this brings us to Draco and Erie today. When I started Logic, our little 19 square mile town was known as the most fracked town in Colorado, with over 350 wells. During my tenure at Logic, I heard firsthand from residents across Erie, before moving to Erie myself, who were experiencing major health impacts, and their children were experiencing major health impacts. People were having blood work done that demonstrated dangerous exposure to oil and gas and hydraulic fracturing associated chemicals. Encana and Extraction, now Crestone and Civitas, at the time were trying to market themselves as a, quote, friendly neighborhood driller. I wish I was joking. Too many people here will tell you that they are certainly not your friendly neighborhood driller, and they certainly do not make good neighbors. Civitas is proposing a large-scale oil and gas site with horizontal laterals that are longer than they've ever done. A little bit about Erie here and that I'd like you all to consider as you consider this decision. First, there was the Coyote site. Between, I believe it was 2017 and 2019, there were over 300 comments made by over 280 Erie residents. Those were individuals, and yes, I counted them. I will remind you of the Ivy site that in 2020 had casings and plug and abandons fail as much as 3 miles away. And there were a couple of parks that had to be removed and demolished so that they could be re-entered, re-plugged, and abandoned. I will remind you of your own, or the study by the Colorado Department of Public Health that demonstrated acute impacts within 2,000 feet of an oil and gas development. And that is on a day where there were no adverse conditions and no sorts of air inversions. We have had 42 ozone action days this year. And we have seen Civitas and Extraction set up just 35 feet from the bedroom window of an elderly woman's bedroom. I'll wrap up. This community is disproportionately impacted, and we have felt the impacts of other large-scale sites that have set up shop just immediately outside our borders to be told that we can't do anything about it for our residents. I urge you to say no to this site, as it is the responsible thing to do and the most protective of public health, safety, and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like 32 is coming up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Middleton. I will hopefully not be living under one of those red lines. I live in Boulder County, but in Erie. And I thank you for all staying awake as long as you have and for listening to us. I'm not going to repeat anything that you have all said because you've all been so much more eloquent than I could ever be. But I come from Maryland. I'm a fairly new resident. And I keep hearing about all the problems that my Pennsylvania neighbors have been having with contaminated water. We've had earthquakes in Maryland, yes, a little bit. Pennsylvania, who has been fracked a lot, has had a lot more. I worry about sinkholes, as Pennsylvania has ghost towns because of that. I just urge you all to be very careful. They're already not great neighbors, and I can't imagine that they would be better neighbors in the future. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Next is 33.
Hello. First, I wanted to thank you all for coming and listening to all of this. I do appreciate it. My name is Tim Rimple. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of myself and Third Act Colorado. Third Act is Bill McKibben of 350.org fame's latest endeavor for elders 60 and above to protect the environment for our children and our grandchildren, and do so by the confluence of that and protecting democracy. I personally have been fighting fracking since 2012, when in Longmont we passed the anti-fracking bill. 60-something% of the people in town agreed with us. The mayor, who him and I, Bagley's a great guy, we don't agree on much politically, but we agree on one thing. Fracking is an industrial activity that does not belong in suburbs, near houses, near hospitals, near schools. The problem we have here is things have evolved in this crazy way, and you folks are chartered with keeping people of Colorado safe. This scares me. It's too close to the new middle school, it's too close to houses, it's too close to plugged wells, it's too close to existing horizontal and vertical wells that they plan to put this through. I also have the dubious distinction of being 2 degrees removed from the Firestone house explosion. Yes, it can happen. This scares the hell out of me. This could be a Deepwater Horizon underneath a suburb. BP had a heck of a time dealing with that in the Gulf. I have a cousin who was at BP for Gulf oil and drilling in the Gulf. He knew a lot about it, and you didn't get him talking about that subject. This is irresponsible. And the final thing that I think about is the air pollution effect on this. We already know how bad the air pollution is, but we're not measuring one key chemical. We measure ozone, we measure M25 particles and 10 particles and that sort of stuff. We're not measuring methane. If we measured methane in the Front Range of Colorado, we'd make the eyeballs of the EPA guys pop out of their heads. It'd be that bad. That's what these folks are living through. So I urge you to reject this. We don't need a Deepwater Horizon underneath Erie. Thank you.
Thank you. 34 coming up.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Fulton and I live in Erie Commons. My husband and I moved here 3 years ago to grow our family. We have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old who I'm currently missing bedtime for to be here. When we moved, I had to get comfortable with fracking. We moved from Washington State, I was in Florida before that, New York before that, we've gone all over. I got comfortable with fracking largely because of the logic models that I found that looked at health impacts in the active drilling phase. From a selfish perspective, I knew that most of the wells around here were plugged and abandoned. At the time, I didn't realize just how many spills were still being discovered, and as has already been mentioned here tonight, there have been about 5 in the last week of spills that have just been publicized. When I heard about this new project, I knew I had to look deeper and educate myself further. So my conclusion is that for me, an active and new fracking site with the longest well bores that we've been hearing about tonight is a risk I can't take for my children. I understand that studies on health impacts of fracking are debated depending on whether you support or oppose fracking. If you don't believe the studies, you can probably still agree that children are more susceptible to environmental toxins. This is a result of their developing organ systems, their faster metabolisms, all things that mean that they're more likely to absorb things from their surroundings than we are. If you agree with that, then you can probably agree that if fracking impacts health, it will likely be impacting our children, and that they are the people who will see those impacts first. This is the risk that I'm being asked to accept if the development goes ahead. If you do believe the studies, though, children within 5 miles of active wells are 4 times more likely to get cancer. And that's the risk that I'm also being asked to accept for my children. There will be future studies titled things like Evaluating Impacts of Fracking Fluid on Pediatric Health, and I do not want my children to be an experiment for that. My second point is a less emotional one. In my professional life, I'm executive director of an impact investment fund. I assess financial risks, I look at social risks, I look at financial data, and I manage contracts. Looking at the history of Civitas, which includes non-permitted drilling activity, non-disclosure of spills, and a lack of information about those spills, I cannot see any situation in which I would be able to recommend approval of their application if it were coming across my desk and I had to make that choice. To have their application get this far through permitting and approvals is appalling to me as a professional and as a taxpayer who believes in a sense of fiduciary responsibility and managing contracts. You might believe fracking is the best way to produce oil and gas, but you don't have to approve a flawed proposal by a contractor that is asking for noise and water exceptions and has a history of withholding information on spills. So I'm fortunate enough to have enough wealth and mobility to move. Others don't, and I sincerely hope I won't have to make a decision about my next home based on this decision. So please reject the Draco plat development.
Next is 35. 35.
Hey, I'm Catherine. I don't need 3 minutes because I wasn't planning on talking, but I live in the southwest corner of that map there in Boulder County. As a Boulder County resident, I'm horrified that they can get away with drilling over here and go under my house. As a medical provider, I'm deeply concerned about contamination of groundwater and soil that studies show does occur with fracking. So I asked a friend of mine who does environmental compliance for an oil and gas company, why would they do something like this? Why would they dig down a mile and go lateral 5 miles? Something that's never been done before. She said that there are almost certainly other ways of extracting those resources from existing infrastructure. So what's already there. So I asked her why don't they do that? Because it's more expensive. There are other ways of doing this that don't involve risking Erie residents' health. They just have to put more money into it. So, thank you.
Thank you. And 36.
Hi. My name is Randy Swanson. I live in Flatiron Meadows. I'm within 100 or so meters of at least 3 wells that might be punctured as part of this effort. One of the lines goes directly under my house, so I feel very invested in the decision that's made by the regulatory bodies. But thank you for being here and listening to us, and listening with an open mind. And also thank you for everyone who's spoken before me. I thought I knew most of the reasons to oppose this effort, but thanks to the speakers before me, they've expanded my knowledge and exposed some of my blind spots. I think we need to ask some fundamental questions. Why now? Why do we need to rush into something that is untested under a populated area? There are too many unanswered questions, too many incomplete responses in the filings, too many violations by the company that's proposing this. There are too many exceptions and waivers that they're asking for to be able to move forward around noise, setbacks, emissions, wetlands and wildlife, and others. There's too many wells that will be punctured as part of this. The risk is just too high in a populated area. Why do we need to use this untested technology in a densely populated area that's rapidly growing versus the open range? Prove this stuff out first. And have it be a requirement that the company that's doing this has done it before.
Right.
The site was chosen for one reason, and it was mentioned several times. It's outside of Erie's jurisdiction, and it's outside of Boulder County's jurisdiction. It's crazy to me that they can select a site simply as an end around to being under the jurisdiction of another county or the town that they're going to burrow entirely across. That's just irresponsible in my mind. This would never happen if you were talking about drilling across state lines or national borders. You need to have people on both sides approve it. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have the same requirement for Boulder County to approve this. I'm getting the sign to fill up. The last point I'll make before closing is there's no reason we should be wasting 500 million gallons of water rather than reusing stuff from other fracking exercises that have been already poisoned. I will remind you simply of the last sentence in your mission. Protect the public health, safety, welfare, and the environment and wildlife resources. I ask you to honor your mission, honor the wishes of the community, honor the wishes of the town of Erie, honor the wishes of Boulder County, and reject this proposal.
Next is 37. And I've been told already that 38 has decided to leave. Looks like 37 may have done the same. So 39.
Hello, my name is Alyssa Shelton, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight until my neighbor texted me and said, hey, your street is on one of the slides for the town of Erie. I said, oh, hang on, let me turn around, I'll be right there. I was dropping my kid off at dance. So when I found out that my home has a capped well, which we thought it was directly underneath my home, but it's thankfully a couple homes down, the first thing I thought about was the Frederick gas line explosion. And just thinking how terrible that would be and how a tragedy like that can happen. So to go back a little bit, like I said, I live in Meadow Sweet Farm, wasn't planning on speaking, so I don't have anything, great statistics or anything impactful to say other than I oppose the Draco site. We moved to Erie in 2015, and when we were looking at the options, we chose Boulder County because there was less oil and gas. I looked at that oil and gas map over and over again and did not want to be anywhere near a well. So we chose our neighborhood that had the one little capped well down the street. There weren't any close wells, and we're kind of tree-hugging hippies. I have solar panels, I drive an electric car, I've done every type of upgrade I can to reduce our water usage and our electrical use in our home. And I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, which both have asthma too. So now we're going to have this underneath our homes. I didn't choose this. If I wanted to choose that, I would have moved to Weld County. But I chose Boulder County because of the moratorium on the fracking. I'm also a nurse, and I have heard of the parents' problems that they've had with their kids with air quality. You call in to BVSD, they have a specific area you can leave a message on air quality and the health of the students. So we know that there are health problems caused by oil and gas being near those wells. I also live a quarter of a mile from the Country Meadows cleanup and have heard from residents around there of the health problems that they have had living near that well. I don't want this in my backyard. There are other places they can put this, and I don't want to be an experiment to run these long lines that have not been tested under all these residential areas. Thank you for your time, and once again, I strongly oppose.
Thank you. Number 40.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Commission, for keeping your eyes open for 40 speakers. I am in sweatpants. I, like Ms. Middleton and Ms. Shelton, was just going to swing by. I am here on behalf of my family of 5, 4 families in the Flatirons Meadow community, which is in that really traumatic map, as well as a family in Candlelight Ridge. I'm an attorney. I'm a mother. Erie is a wonderful place to live, but I'm going to speak to you as a human being. We've heard a lot this evening, and I don't want to repeat that, and I wasn't prepared, and I think statistics are for scientists. I shouldn't have to be a scientist to live in this community, right? You've been appointed by the governor. We have our trust in you. Your mission has been changed. Your mission was changed from being the former Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to now being the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. When we talk about public health, when we talk about safety, and we talk about welfare, which is part of your mission and your goals, I think that's all we've talked about this evening. If that is not your priority, if it's because there are it's too expensive, or oil and gas is putting on a lot of pressure, you're not fulfilling your mission. But I know you will. I was told by many people, swing by, it won't make a difference. There's no point in making a comment. No one's really gonna care. As a land use and zoning attorney for over 20 years, I know you will care. It's your duty, it's your obligation. I'm very confident you're gonna make the right decision and you're gonna vote no against this project, because not only do you have a heart, you have an intellect that can tell you otherwise. The unknown impacts here are incredible. I myself am working on a project in the Northeast dealing with certain issues, and we're looking at impacts now that no one could have ever thought were possible. If this was a public space, maybe you'd have me. But when we've got all of these neighborhoods and schools, it's unbelievable to me how far we are in this process when we're talking about things like fast tracking, an experiment, waivers, knowing the setbacks in the town. Disappointing is not a word that really covers it. I think I've sat here for almost 3 hours and I've now become panicked at how far we've gotten. Let me put my lawyer hat on in the 30 seconds that I have. So the proposed extraction site covers areas we know in Weld and Boulder and the town. Does Civitas, have they provided documentation that shows, that's been released publicly, confirming that they have actual rights to the land, including land owned by the local governments I've just mentioned? The failure to have consent from these local governments is in essence a clear violation of SB 24-185, and it's known as forced pooling. I hope that issue has been covered. I hope that they have the consents they need. I hope we don't end up in expensive litigation that a lot of the community is going to get involved in, and the trauma that we're seeing tonight. I thank you for your time and your consideration. And again, I thank my community for coming out and filling this room, because that's how important it is, and there'll be more people at the commission meeting next week, I'm sure. So thank you.
Thank you. Hold on, but we do have one more, number 41.
Hello, Commission. My name is Andrew Sawish. I'm a resident of Flatiron Meadows. I'm on the very far west side of the map up there. Didn't think I'd have an impact from this facility, but evidently 5 miles as the crow flies is exactly where I live. I'm also a council member here in town, so I'm not going to stand here and repeat everything that was basically said by all these individuals. You heard 40 individuals, minus 5 or so, 35 individuals who have spoken from the heart. What I'm here to say is that we are an impacted community. We are a community that is constantly dealing with the effects of oil and gas operations. Since April, the notifications that we've received on council have been Pratt F Unit 1, Woolley 22-7, Hammer Facility, Erie 124 Well, Arapahoe 226, State of Colorado AL2 and AZ1 OSA, Warren H. Wiggett, Pratt 4229 and 2229, Thomas 24-7, 33-7, Vessels 1230. These are all notifications of spills or releases that have occurred since April alone. So to say that we are an oil and gas impacted facility or community is the truth. So you guys have a very hard decision. You're going to have to next week decide whether or not this application is going to continue to move forward. If it does move forward, I ask that you enforce and adhere to the requests that Erie has made. The oil and gas monitoring at the plug and abandon sites, as I just went through, we have a number of plug and abandon facilities throughout town. They're scattered throughout, some that aren't even listed here, some that aren't even listed on some of the maps that you guys have. We ask that you also look at the operator as a stakeholder in the community and make sure that they do have the roads finished and make sure that they are leaving our community in a better condition than when they left us. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the folks who signed up to speak. I do want to just check in and see if there's anyone else who's here who hasn't had a chance to speak tonight and has decided you do want a chance to speak. I'm going to give you that chance to do so. All right, I am not seeing any takers on that, so I want to thank you again. Oh, I'm sorry. Great.
My name is Megan. I live in Boulder, and I have been fighting fracking for as long as I've lived here, which is about 20 years now. I'm so sick of coming to these hearings and hearing the stories of people who live with this every day and watching you guys and different faces, different years, but nothing changes. I mean, I have fought for legislation in the Capitol. I've given testimony so many times. I am so tired of this. You guys let this happen to our beautiful state. And it's mind-boggling to me that you can sit there with a straight face and approve things like this year after year after year. And it just never stops. I mean, there are people here who are just learning about what fracking is, and people here who have been in this longer than I have. And I mourn for all of us. I mean, I mourn for our climate. I mourn for all the animals. I mourn for the children with the nosebleeds and everybody who's going to get cancer because of what you guys are going to decide next week. I mean, when does it stop? That's what you have to ask yourself.
Thank you. Okay, well, I want to, again, thank all of you very much for being here. Thank you very much to everybody who spoke and shared your comments, spoke from the heart, shared with us what you're concerned about, thoughts and requests that you have. We will definitely be taking that into account when we consider this next week. We have information on our website about the hearing next week. It sounds like a number of you will be there, and so we look forward to more comments to come. Anything else before we conclude? Okay, thank you all very much. Have a good evening.